Recording.
Okay. All right, so welcome to this evening, this talk let's talk about the mind. And as always, hi Alex. As always, we want to start with our motivation. This initial motivation sets the stage. It creates the direction of all of the energy that we put in and allows us to really utilize every moment in many ways, but particularly in developing our minds towards the highest potential that we have. So we'll just start by noticing the breath for just a moment, checking in with ourself and our own mind, and using the breath as a reflection, sort of like seeing the mist on a mirror and being able to interpret that mist to know the state of our minds. So by observing the mind that is placed upon the awareness of the breath, it gives us insight into how anxious we are, how settled we are. Pretty quickly, our body comes into focus just from the movement of the breath in and out. We don't need to change anything. We're just observing the sensations of breathing and then observing the mind and the state of the mind we have. And so as the basics for teacher training tell us that we start where the students are, we start where our own mind is. We are the teacher of our own mind. So we need to actually observe where our mind is in order to know what to do, what to train, what to avoid, and what to increase. So first observe. Notice how the mind changes, and in a few moments of breathing, and expand that mind to our intention. Why are we doing this? And Alex, you're not muted. You might want to mute. Thank you. So our intention for being here might be social. Maybe we want to feel better by being with others. in our virtual world, or it might be to support the community and be a member of the City Garba Center, or it might be to explore the Dharma, might be to explore the mind. But if we expand that out into as vast and profound an intention, then every little thing that we do for the next hour and a half becomes the cause for developing that higher potential, that more vast, meaning affecting more of those beings around us, or more profound, meaning going more deeply into the philosophical exploration of the meaning of reality. So we want to develop our minds to their most beneficial potential so that everything that we do with our body, with our speech, with our minds becomes the cause for others' happiness, which then reflects back on our own happiness. We accomplish both of those, lasting, long-term happiness together, our own and others. And then also that deepening into that understanding of reality so that we're in accord with it. When we have a mind that is slightly off, it's like we're not quite tuned to the same um, frequency as reality, and that can cause some disturbance in our mind. So if we come to be very closely aligned in our understanding of what is real and what isn't real, we have a better um, chance of letting go of that dissonance between our minds and reality. So with that, one way to say all of that is that we want to become enlightened in order to benefit other sentient beings, all sentient beings, without exception, without favoritism, and through developing wisdom, understanding the nature of reality, we will be liberated from suffering. So we're going to do a few of our customary prayers. They're on the screen already, and you can say these. I'll just be the one that's speaking right now because it's easier to not hear all the voices at once, but I'm hoping that you're actually doing this in your own mind, or as much as you're comfortable. So the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha, to the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings. To you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings. To you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. I don't have a mala in arm's reach, so I'm using a pen. So I figure I use my pen quite a lot, and hopefully as an instrument, it's a good offering. So this is our way of requesting that the Buddha, Shakyamuni, that our teachers are able to sink through all of the thickness of our own habits and so on. So we perform this act of sort of generosity and request to undo our own obstacles. This ground, this earth, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, and adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami, which means accept this jeweled mandala. So imagine that the gurus, the Buddhas, all of the positive forces in the world have accepted our offering as much as we have imagined. Everything that we've actually had held in our hands is accepted, and they are happy with that. And then we take refuge and generate bodhicitta. So in order to actually take refuge, we need a little fear. Why are we taking refuge? We're taking refuge because in reality, my mind is limited. Maybe yours isn't, but my mind is limited. And because it's limited, I have a habit of falsely believing that some of the things that I do are good when they are actually harming. And so we take refuge in order to have that guidance and protection from our own mind. So we'll say it once in Tibetan using the phonetics that are on the screen, and then twice in English. Sangye chudang sogi chognam la jang chu pardu dagni kyap suchi dagi chun yengi pe sonam gi drola penshir sangye drupar sho. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. All right. Welcome, everybody. It's nice to see you here, Sarah, Alex, Mary Jo. How wonderful, Mary Jo. Perfect timing. You made it. So you guys are muted right now, but as you might have guessed, I've asked for you guys to be able to discuss. So let's set it up so that we only have one person talking at a time. We all turn our mics off when we're not talking. So it means a little bit of self-discipline. And I will turn off my mic usually as well. And and we'll go back and forth when we're doing the discussion. So are you guys all ready for that? Alex, are you good with that instruction? You know how to turn your mic off and on?
I tried.
All right, good. So, what the topic is that we're looking at today is what the mind is. So our all right, so I have to switch my screen in order to move this. Hold on a second. Okay. Huh. All right. Let me see about this here. Sorry about that. So I've got a little bit of a technical issue here where I'm trying to do this, and I want to start with the first, that one. Let me try that. Go. Okay, so this is Let's Talk About the Mind. And I've separated it into 3 sections just to keep myself organized. I'm going to ask you guys to help me with what do we actually know about the mind? And then what are we learning? What might we not know all that much about, but we want to know more about? And then where this takes us. How does that come back to our own reality and how we use this information in our daily lives? So what we know is, do you agree with this statement? Do you agree? Do you know this to be true? The mind is not the brain. Does anybody have any immediate reaction or studied response to this?
Rachel, I find that this topic is the most difficult topic for me to get all logic around, because and really I have to just, because I trust my lamas, I have to believe that what they're telling me here is true. Now, because this may be premature, for the mind is not the brain, but the mind without a brain, I don't know if in the formless realms, if there is a formless brain, I don't know. But without a something to encompass the mind, it's useless. It's useless to us. It's useless anyway, So but certainly in our realm, in our human realm, the mind requires a brain. It's part of the brain is part of the causes and conditions for the mind.
Okay, so that's really interesting, because when I hear what I hear you saying is, in the formless realm, there might be a brain.
I don't know.
To anchor the mind. And formless means that there's no material substance. So there won't be a brain as we know it, that's for sure. There won't be an electronic brain. There won't be a physical brain of any kind, because there is no form, and that form there would have to be form for there to be a brain.
Mm-hmm. Unless it's a formless brain.
but so then it would be mental. If it's not, so that what we're setting up here is the difference between matter and mental phenomena. Without matter, we're in the formless realm. We're in the mental realm. So Sarah has a question.
More or less a comment. On YouTube, the other day, I was listening to a wonderful panel discussion on consciousness and rebirth. And it was moderated by the comedian John Cleese. And there were about 7 people from different disciplines on this panel, and they discussed this issue. They did bring up the fact that cases have been noted where there was no brain activity, but yet the person or some part of the person was able to leave the body and recount the conversations in the operating venue. And I suppose they were brought back somehow from the state. But that was one thing that puzzled all of them, was this supposedly brain dead person that actually some part of him or her was conscious.
Well, there are 2 aspects to that. My scientific brain says, well, they just haven't developed anything subtle enough to see the activity that's going on in the brain at that point, right? They're not measuring where
Yeah.
that is. So there's that, the lack of technological advancement, right? That's a possibility, right? That's a possibility.
Right.
But there's also, if that's actually not the case, if the brain is actually not there, and like, how can someone who's clairvoyant be accurate in like a projection from or understanding what's going on somewhere where they have no information coming to them except through a mental plane?
Good.
So it's a dilemma. Our brain, we don't even know how to use our brain, let alone our mind. And there's that percentage of we use that small percentage of our brain. So there's a lot we don't know as a human species, right? Or race. We don't know our own minds very well. Back to what Eloise was saying about, if the mind is not matter. And so this is really the distinction that we have to understand in Tibetan studies, like what I've done in my studies. It's like you always have to come back to, well, what are we defining things as? And we're always defining mental activity as non-physical. So a non-physical thing can't be a physical thing. The mind can't be the brain, because the brain is a physical organ. It's like the heart, the skin, the lungs. It's a physical organ. It's part of the nervous system. So you could take the whole nervous system as the brain. You could take the guts as part of the brain. You could take the heart as part of the brain. But you can't say that those physical organs are completely the same as the mind. They are interdependent. It's like the base, it's the physical basis for the mental activity that we're doing. And we know that because we can watch how an injury to the brain or chemical imbalance in the brain will cause us to have certain thoughts or certain experiences in emotions. And we can see all of that cause and effect going back and forth. And if we think things, if we have anger arise in our mind, that will have a physical effect on our body. Our physiological experience will be influenced by that mental process of thinking. If we have anger and that is ripening into rage in our mind, that will increase our blood pressure. Our face will go red. Our eyes will get red. We'll see red. This is a physiological response to a mental activity. So they go back and forth. They have an interrelationship. It's not like they're totally separated, but they are not the same thing. Does Eloise, are we getting there? There was another thought I had from what you said that we're going to get to, but I've forgotten which one it is. So hopefully as we go along, something else will also answer what you were talking about. That problem of this is difficult to accept somehow. But it's like other things in Tibetan Buddhism. It's sort of like a definition, you know? What are you saying is the mind if you're saying that it needs to have an anchor in the brain? What is the mind to you? What is that concept really that you're holding on to that makes this difficult? The mind is a mental, in the mental sphere. It's not a physical object. It's the initiator. It's like it's the prebiotic, right? It's the thing before. It's the intention. It's those mental factors, those emotions, those things that are moving through our complex self that inspire something in the physical world. Okay. Anybody else have something, an immediate reaction or a difficulty or a comment about something they've heard recently, or anybody else want to jump in? What I've noticed is now that I'm sharing my screen on this, I don't see everybody there. Maybe I can do it this way. Yeah, I can do it this way. Okay, good. Now I can see everybody too. So let's move to the next thought, and it's related, right? We've heard about, what do you want to say, Mary Jo? You have to unmute, sweetheart. You're muted. You don't know how to. Okay, John, is there any way you can unmute Mary Jo?
You're
Okay,
unmuted now, Mary.
Okay.
I'm unmuted.
Speak.
Thank you. I've got some strange screen and I don't have the mute thing. So I'm sorry about that. I seem to be stuck there. I can't move it around. I question if it's only the precursor. I wonder if it also the mind can't be responsive to the physical body as well as the initiator. And I am wondering, are we Buddhists the only people in the world that is concerned with this? I'm just curious.
That's great. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that the physical influences the body, how we feel things when they're pleasant or unpleasant or neutral is always going to come back into the mind, and the mind is experiencing that. And that's part of this very complex, study that Tibetans have done of, or not just Tibetans, but Buddhists have done about the nature of the mind, the types of mind, the lorik, you know, what does what, and what's a perception, and how we directly perceive things in our senses, and then how that positive experience or negative experience or neutral experience is something that we either want more of or don't want more of. And that how that then feeds back into a loop, like a cycle of the mind wanting those things that are positive or pleasant, and not wanting those things that are painful, of course, right? We're very, very clear about that, I have to move around a lot more now because I have, pain in my hips. I respond to that physical thing with a mental state, right? So yes, I think you're right. It goes both ways. But if we're talking about the choice, where we have the choice, it starts with the mind. If we choose to follow that impulse or not follow that impulse towards what's pleasant, away from what's not. And I only say that academically, Mary Jo. I'm still investigating that, right? So experientially, maybe you have a different experience of that, but my understanding is in those 12 links of dependent origination, where that happens is in the mind. Where that choice actually happens is in the mind. Okay. And sometimes I have small experience of that, but the lamas say that as well. It comes from the mind, right? Our actions start with our intention. And when we have that intention to do something and then we act on it, then that's a complete set, from intention to completion of the action. So then that feeds into karma and all of that. But wait, so so what was the second part of your, besides the back and forth, what was the second part, Mary Jo?
Well, just wondering if us people who are Buddhists, are we the only ones who have a concern with this?
Well, science is, psychology and psychotherapy and all of those sciences are concerned with the mind. So I don't think only Buddhists are concerned with the mind. I think every educator is concerned with the mind, right? How do we learn something? So the mind, the study of the mind itself, and influences the practices of being a school teacher, for instance. A politician wants to know how our minds work so that they can manipulate them, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people look at the mind from their perspective of what they want to get out of it.
Yes, it just, I guess I'm questioning the interrelationship between the brain and the mind. That's the one that seems like is quite something to debate, and I just was wondering if we're the ones. That's the only way. That's the only venue in which I have heard people say, no, the mind is different than the brain, very different. Of course, I haven't been in neuropsychology classes and things like that either.
I don't know, but this is, centuries of definition development here, the mind and the brain being separated in the study of Buddhism, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a good question whether it's only in this context that we would that we would say it. I think it's starting to seep in. Like I know that the FDCW, the Foundation for the Development of Wisdom and Compassion, I mean, this is the basis of what they are saying in a secular environment as well. So I don't know. I'm going to have a few months conversation with some psychoanalysts, and I will be asking them some of that. That's excellent.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah. So when we talk about the self, and so the psychoanalysis, psychology, it's all about the self, right? The ego and all the rest. And the brain, the psychiatrists are dealing with the brain as the cause of things that happen around the self. But in Buddhism, we've heard this before, that there are 5 aggregates, these collections of things that we heap together into ourself. And they are 4 of them are mental, and only 1 of them is physical or form. So out of 5, 4 of those are mental. So when we read through the Heart Sutra, and Avalokiteshvara is saying to Shariputra, emptiness is form is also emptiness, and then they go through all 5 aggregates. So form is the only one that's physical. That's the brain part of this equation. It's everything that we see. So form in Tibetan has 2 meanings, and one is what we actually see. So something we can see, and specifically the visual object. But it also, in this context, is any kind of physical matter. Or at least that's how it's been interpreted. Everything that we experience scientifically falls into form. Energy, except it may be energy. Energy then becomes this, combination of form and not form somehow. But sounds and so on are still experienced through our sense organs, our sensory consciousness. And this is what one of the things is: if we don't have that object, we don't have that consciousness. So that's what I was thinking about, Eloise, and I think that addressed what you were getting to a little earlier. So we're going to look at that specifically. It's like we want to unpack this very simple sentence that the mind is not the brain, and we're going to have to look at it from a few angles. One of them is the self and how we think of ourself. We think of ourselves as our body, the physical form. Other people can see. We can see it in the mirror. We can touch it. We can smell it, even when we don't want to. And we can taste and hear and all of these things. We have these sense even of ourselves. But it's this physical body that's that form of us as ourself. Then we have feeling, discrimination, what's called compositional factors, and consciousness. These other 4 aggregates, ways in which we heap together a collection of things that we call me, right? I feel, I am angry, I am happy, I am sad. These are feelings that we actually start to see as a part of ourself. I am happy-go-lucky. I am intelligent. I am all these characteristics, but they're also feelings, discriminations. I am not something else. I am this. that ability to perceive or discriminate a self from a non-self. And compositional factors is this collection of everything that's not form, not feeling, not discrimination, and not consciousness. But what's really interesting in these 5 aggregates is consciousness is different from other mental activities. And this is really a refinement of our understanding of what the mind is. So this is where we're going to go into more sort of depth. So Alex, are you still here? Did Alex seems to have gone, yeah? Okay. Any questions or comments about the aggregates and how everything that's not form is these 4 aggregates that are mental in nature? That are non-physical. Eloise, do you want to say something?
Yeah,
Okay.
I always forget what the compositional factors refers to.
Everything else that's
I know,
mental.
but what is, like, what does that mean?
All right. So have you ever studied the types of mind, low rig?
Yeah.
And you know, there's 51 mental factors.
Correct.
Only 2 of them are listed in the 5 aggregates,
Oh, I
feeling
see.
and discrimination.
Okay,
All
so
the rest,
of the other, the 49 others.
49 plus some others that aren't even mentioned in the 51.
Right.
Okay, so
Okay.
it's everything else. So that's literally I'm not literally, but that is sort of the definition of it. It's like it's the collection of everything else that isn't consciousness, a consciousness. And there are only 7 types of consciousness or whatever, you know, like it's like you got to go into each of what each one means, right, to kind of get it. But and I don't even have them strong enough to like rattle them all off, right? But the consciousness is one thing. It's like a main mind,
Mhm.
and then the mental factors are attached to that main mind.
Right.
So there's a difference between a mental factor and a consciousness in what they can do, or like what that difference is really interesting. I'm not sure I know it clear enough right now, but I might by next week.
Okay.
No, I might know it a little better by next week. So yes, Mary Jo.
But the mental factors are a part of consciousness. Is that right?
Well,
Or they lead to it, or they're
they're
precursors?
okay. So it's an interesting thing. It's like my understanding right now, kind of a general understanding, is that a mental factor can be like a state of mind, whereas a consciousness is more like an awareness. So you can have an awareness, like we watched our breath. I guess you missed that part. We watch our breath and we can have an awareness of the breath, but there can be a quality to that mind. We could be angry. That's a mental factor. We could be, we could have joy in our hearts. That's a mental factor. So we have this consciousness, which is an awareness, which is a mind. It's called a mind. But we can have these mental factors that are of varying types. There's the type of mental factors that omnipresent. It's always present in a consciousness. There's other types of mental factors that are temporary. We know we're not always angry. We're not always happy. They are more like adventitious. They come and they go. They attach on sometimes, but not others, right? So there are different types of mental factors. Some of them are always present and some of them aren't.
Okay,
It's an awareness. It's a knower.
thank you.
Oh yeah. Slowly, slowly, we absorb these ideas. So our aggregates and our identity, our self, our sense of self or our identity. When do we know this is me? The other day, I think it was just yesterday, my hip was giving me a lot of pain. There was a lot of pain, and I was starting to become really discombobulated in myself. It's like something about myself wasn't the way I imagined it was, and my identity was challenged because of a physical sensation, plus a mental sensation, a mental construct and conflict with that. So when things are changing, we're faced with that change, and we might notice our aggregates. We might notice our identity butting up against reality, right? When things are changing and our mental image isn't changing fast enough. I still think I'm 25. I can't walk around like I'm 25, but I still think I'm 25 and I can pick up 120 pounds. I just do. That's my mental image of my physical strength, and it's not true. So things are changing when there's pain, when we become mentally unsettled about who we are. It kind of gives us a picture of our mental image and how we think of ourselves. When something unexpected happens and we're shocked, then we might see some of this differently. But those 5 aggregates of form, feelings, discrimination. And I was around somebody translating Tibetan, and he kept saying perception instead of discrimination. So you can think about these different translations of words, and you get an idea of what's being indicated in a different language, right? So what's the difference between discriminating and perceiving something? When we are able to discriminate anything, right? Red from blue. I can tell that's a red color there and a blue color there. It's a perception also of red and blue. Yeah, go ahead, Mary Jo.
But it seems to me like it's usually used almost like in comparison to something else, and perception could be just kind of like, this is red, I see. Not,
But
I don't,
when do you know how we label anything? When we go to label a giraffe, you see it when you see a giraffe out of the blue. First you say, it's not a dog, it's not a cat, it's not a monkey, it's not an elephant, it's not a human being, it's not a car, it's not a tree, it's not a this, it's not a that, it's not until you know it's giraffe. That's how our mind perceives. So if we've already gotten to red, we've discriminated a whole lot of things to get there.
And it could have been years ago. Yeah, it could have been a long time ago.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't understand. A long time ago. What about long time ago?
It could have been years ago that I learned that this is what we call red.
Right, but every time you see something that's red, if I were to hold this up, right, you'll see it. It's the first time you've seen it, and you'll say, this is red, because your eye sees a certain vibration of light, a certain frequency of light.
Yeah.
And you've already gone from the visual sense of that frequency to a label of a color, which you've learned a long time ago. But when we actually see it, that discrimination, if it happens in the eye, if it happens in the consciousness, when the neurons fire into the brain and we have a recognition of color, we have a mental construct around that color, right? And that's a perception, that's a discrimination, that it's not another color even before we label it with the word red,
Okay.
right? What happens is in Tibetan or in Buddhist like practice, what they did was they broke things down into minute, subtle moments, right? So if you sit in meditation, like I don't have much experience, but when I sat in meditation for 3 months, sense consciousnesses seemed different than my regular experience of the world, right? If you were to do that for 6 months or 2 years or 5 years or 12 years, if you were to be calming your discursive mind, the one that was always busy, and you were just focusing on each moment's awareness of each moment, you would be able to break down some of these things, to a really fine degree, right? And then you'd be able to talk about that. You'd be able to talk about where that discrimination happened, where that perception ended, and a mental construct was started, right? So, and then the feelings that would become attached to that, when I was a child, I liked red more than I liked any other color. What feeling I had about red, where did that come from, and what originated that? And then I created an identity when I was about 5, and I told my mother I won't wear anything that doesn't have red, so I created an identity around the color red. And that's an example of how we all do that. We create our identities around our experience that's been pleasant, and we want more of it, right? And we say, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is what I like. As soon as we say all that, we have embedded our identity on, like you said, a long time ago, the perceptions and discriminations and feelings that we've had interacting with reality. And our aggregates are all of the things that we label ourselves on, right? We're born human, we're born in the form realm, and therefore there are 5 aggregates. If we're, like Eloise was saying, if you're born in the formless realm, there are only 4 aggregates. You don't have the form aggregate. You have feelings, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness. So if you're born in a different realm, you don't necessarily, we're in the desire realm, which is within the form realm. So we go even further into that. But so form is one of our 5 aggregates. In the formless realm, there's only 4. It's just a mental realm. There are no material factors going on. Sarah, you doing all right? Okay. Any other questions, anybody comments or anything you want to add in? Yeah,
Do you think in the formless realm,
Eloise.
do you think in the formless realm, the consciousness of formless consciousness can see form or touch form or feel form or be aware, have an awareness of form?
Well, there won't be the sensory organs of sight, sound, smell, taste. We won't have an ear to hear, right?
Yeah.
They'll be able, and just logically the answer, and I don't know, you should ask that question of somebody more knowledgeable than I, but they would have all the ability to experience mental experiences.
Hmm.
So anything that was a mental experience, they would be able to interact with. But anything that was a physically based, it's sort of like it would exist in the same space and wouldn't interfere.
Hmm.
There would be no obstruction by form.
Hmm.
Whether they could be aware of it or not. I mean, what was I thinking? I was thinking, how do we get to the formless realm? Karmically, my understanding is we get there through meditative absorption, right?
Yeah.
When you're absorbed in the mental sphere, everything that's mental, and you're not paying any attention to the physical, and then that becomes your whole reality. That's when if you were to die in that state, then you would, well, if it was a positive state, I don't know. Anyway, I don't remember all those details, but right now, I think the answer would be basically no. They would only, a formless being would only be interacting with formless phenomena, because they wouldn't have a form-based sensory apparatus. Okay, Mary Jo, you had your hand waving.
It's okay. It was a long time ago. I missed one of your words, and it was I don't know if I can't put it together with the other words. So let's just skip on forward.
All right. Well, you can watch it again and ask me later if
Yeah,
you want. If it
That's-
bothers you. If not, let it go. It's fine.
But
Okay.
also, I am thinking about what you were talking about with Eloise. So that formless realm seems like it's a lot of maybe the realm of thought and feeling, maybe. I don't know. That's just what I'm wondering.
Yes, it's feelings, discrimination, consciousness, and everything else that's mental, that's not form. Anything that is in those four aggregates would be in the formless realm. All right, let's see what's next now. So we're defining a person, ourself, right? And I was taking a Tibetan class yesterday, and in Tibetan, the sentence "Kachik ki sem kangzaki senshir de do" is, some assert that mind is the definition of the person. It's totally out of context. It's just, I was like, I just happened to come across this random Tibetan phrase in an example of some grammar. And I thought, oh, I wonder what this would inspire in terms of, if we're defining a person, some people do assert that the mind is the definition of a person. So do you, when you think of yourself, when you define yourself as a person, do you define it as your body? Do you define it as just your mind or just your body, or a combination of your body and your mind, form and formless? What's your, now you might want to sit with this one for a while, you know, like what do I actually do when I think of myself? Who am I? Am I just my feelings? Are my feelings myself? Are my awarenesses, when I'm conscious of something, is that myself? Is my body myself? And how do those all layer together in these five aggregates? You know, how do I actually, you know, not be affected by a hip that's painful? How do I not identify myself as this particular body, or this particular mental state, or this particular awareness? Playing with those just a little bit. Go ahead. Who wants to say something?
Well, I've always learned that it's the body, mind, and I can't come to the word, I want to say continuum, but that might not be the right word, but the body, mind together is the definition of a person.
What do you think, Mary Jo?
Well, I just think that those things are quite liquid, I guess. They're flowing a lot and not stuck in any one place usually, although one may be sort of predominate, but that's what I believe.
Anybody else want to chime in? Sarah's getting to her mic. I thought she was. Sarah, did you want to say something? Oh, she can't unmute? Okay, John, can you unmute Sarah, please? No?
I can only ask her to unmute, but I can't do it myself.
Oh, no.
Did it.
Got it.
There you go.
I did it. Well, no, I didn't have anything to say, nothing to add. I just don't know. These things are so, metaphysical? Metaphysical's not my area, I'm afraid.
But you know yourself. And
Yeah.
you know, what do you think of when you think of yourself? What causes you to think this is me?
I think everything, the body, the feelings, the face recognition, the imagination, the whole package is what I identify. It's what I identify with, really.
And like Mary Jo's saying, sometimes it's the body, like it's really strong, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not.
But that's still part of
So
you. It's part of the package.
What, Sarah?
she said it's still part of you. It's part of the package. So even when something's not as strong, it's still there. It's part of the package. And
Yeah, that's part of the impermanence. That's just part of impermanence, the fact that you're never the same. You never have the same, physical and mental combination at the same time. Every second is really different. But it's still you, even though it's changing.
So what is it that doesn't change? That's still you. How do we know that's still us if it's changing? How do
Well,
we
there
know
you
that?
are. That's the question, isn't it? I guess it doesn't change that dramatically. These changes are subtle enough that there's still continuity there. I feel like we're getting into emptiness. Emptiness. Well-
Yeah, I saw it coming too. That's how the realization of subtle impermanence is helping us get to that understanding of emptiness. Yeah.
Wait, let me get my seatbelt on.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. So it sounds like, pardon me, we don't assert, even though some people might assert the mind is the definition of the person. So far, nobody has spoken up and said the mind is the definition of myself or the person itself, right? John is quite quiet. Any thoughts over there you want to share? No. Oh, okay. Let's see what else. So what is the mind? What is, yes. Mary Jo.
I'm sorry, but just to backtrack a little, I think to me, it's such a far step to think of not having our bodies that it's a little hard to really imagine that and to even think about the reality of what about the rest of us without the body, because our body, I believe, has been the common denominator for such a long time. And so it's really asking a lot to stretch that far, I think. I'm not saying that we couldn't stretch that far, but I mean, it's something that's hard to grasp, really, for me.
Mhm. So this combination of body and mind, we experience for this lifetime. There's that continuity of the body. Whereas, but subtly, every 7 years, all of our cells are different. You know, we have a totally new body every 7 years. Nothing from 7 years ago is still here. Maybe that's not quite true, but maybe some chemicals stick in the fat and they stick around longer than 7 years. But the idea that this body is sort of consistent is because we're not aware of our mind before this body existed. Sarah, are you trying to say something or are you just unmuting? I'm muting. Okay. So what this is based on, like what Buddhism is presenting seems to be based on is the experience of, okay, right now, my mental consciousness, my consciousness is by definition based on a prior moment of mental consciousness. And so if you think back to what you were just saying, you're remembering that prior moment of consciousness, right? And if you go back before that to the one before, you can actually retrace your steps through memory of each moment of mental of consciousness, right? So you can say, right before I got on this Zoom call, I was eating dinner. Right before that, I was reading a book. And you can put your mind back into that consciousness. You can remember it. You can go through your whole day today until the first moment when you woke up. And what was it you were thinking right then? And then you can remember snippets of dreams or consciousnesses of states that are sort of like sleep. And then you can remember the last thing that you did yesterday before you went to sleep. And if you do that, you can do that for that day and the day before and the week before and the month before and the year before. And we can go all the way back to a moment of birth. And then we can say, what was the mental consciousness before that? It has to come. See, this is where definitions become like tricks. The definition of consciousness is it has to come from a prior moment of consciousness. There has to be something it arises from, and it can't be material. It has to be mental. So consciousness arises from consciousness. So at birth, there has to have been a prior moment of consciousness that it came from. It doesn't just come from nothing. So that's okay. We know that the fetus inside the womb is conscious, right? They can interact with the light and the sounds around them. So that makes some sense to our scientific brain. But if we go all the way back through the 9 months in the womb to the moment before conception, before whatever, where at whatever point that happens, maybe it's not 9 months, but where consciousness joins the physical form. Then we go, consciousness still has to have a prior moment of consciousness because that's the definition of how it works. It doesn't arise from nothing. It has to come from something. And it doesn't come from the physical form itself. It comes from a prior mental consciousness. Therefore, at the moment when the consciousness that is now my consciousness in this body and has been since the moment of that maybe conception or maybe a little after where that physical grouping of cells joined a consciousness, at that point, the prior moment of consciousness, and that has to be a consciousness. That's the logic. That's also what in meditation some people focus on, going back to their previous life, to the previous existence of their mental consciousness before this physical being came into effect. So if we can do that, if we can remember things we've forgotten, then we can go backwards like that, and we can trust that even though I can't remember it right now, if I were to put my mind in that practice, I would get better at that until I could actually do that. Is that unsettling? I'm not getting any reaction. That's okay.
It's not unsettling to me, but this is the part that I just have to take on faith. I mean, the logic of every moment being dependent upon the moment before, each moment of consciousness depending on the moment of consciousness before, I don't have any trouble with that at all. However, how it's actually moving, how it moves from one life through the bardo into another life, how I don't have a handle on how that really works. Because we're not talking about form here. So it's not really a mind stream, you know. That's a nice way to think of it, because a river's doing the same thing. One particle of water is hitting the next particle of water, which hits the next particle of water. So it looks like it's one particle flowing, but it's really just one particle hitting the next particle, hitting the next particle, hitting the next particle. And that, to our visual sense, looks like a flowing river. So it's a good analogy, calling it a mind stream, but there are no particles hitting the next particle, hitting the next particle, hitting the next particle. So how is it traveling? How is it going from life to life? This has really been perplexing to me. And, various lamas have said, well, it's like energy. Well, again, energy is basically small particles, hitting particles, hitting particles, hitting particles. How is this happening without any form? How's it just floating? I mean, and how can it stay, if it's just floating, how can it stay continuous? Widen it like a pool game where you hit one ball and they all go ping off in different directions. How is it that your consciousness doesn't go ping off all into different directions, but stays in this mind stream? How that works is something I've never been able to get my mind around.
It reminds me of the problems people have with the concept of light. It can be either a particle or a wave, but you can never see both at the same time. Depends on how you measure it. And so maybe our mind is a little bit like that, our mind stream. And also, excuse me, when I'm meditating on this, I have to be so careful to try to distinguish between what I think of as consciousness from what I think of as mind, because I really do think they're very different things.
So, we need more definitions. We need to go and be more precise about what we're talking about, right? Whether they are the same, whether they're different, we need to start to investigate how those are. And that's starting to go into our conventional definitions of mind, right? What we're going to do next week. We're getting close to the end here, so maybe we should just ruminate on this for the time being and wrap it up. Or do you guys want to keep going? I mean, we can keep longer and just get a little preview, and we can flesh it out next week. But the definition of mind.
Oh. Did we lose Rachel?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my God. Hey, will you guys mind staying a little bit afterwards so I can talk to you, because you're all the board?
Just Rachel coming back, I think.
Yep, she's coming.
Yes, I could stay.
Welcome back, Rachel.
But she seems to be muted.
I am here.
Oh, there you are.
Thank you. No, I'm back. I've got that unmuted, right? You can hear.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess it's time to stop. I can't give away what we're gonna do next time.
Okay.
So yeah, that was the signal from the universe. The llama saying enough. That's enough, Rachel. This has been really wonderful. I hoped, and Payman, we didn't hear your voice yet, but I had hoped that we could.
Sorry, you're breaking up.
So if you had any reaction, Payman, you're welcome to maybe have the last word, and then we'll do the prayers.
Well, I missed most of the teaching. I was talking to Mary for a very long time. And I came in right at the end, and I was really interested what Eloise said about what the heck. I can't wrap my mind around. And what I kept thinking was, we're limited, right? We're limited by our senses. And so I don't know, and by our language, like how we can't think about what that is. It's more of an experience, I think. I don't know. I'm the same as you, Eloise. I can't explain that. It's a faith thing.
Yeah, it is. For me, it's definitely a faith thing.
So that's not something that you can converse with people about who aren't really Buddhists, because they'll be like, well, what, and they always, oh, it's just faith. And you're like, yeah. You gotta go, I can't explain it. That's what it is. Okay.
Well, maybe if we examine it and analyze it a little bit more, we'll have more capacity to articulate. So we'll try. We'll see how far we get in these 3 weeks. But it's been a nice. I like working with you guys on this task of talking about the mind and figuring out what we already know, right, and what we're learning. So we'll go from there.
Thank you,
So
Rachel. This was really fun.
yeah, good. So John, if you have the closing prayers, we'll do those. And as we did at the beginning, set our motivation as vast and profound as possible. Now we're going to wrap it all together, box it up, put it on one of those box cars in the train on the way to enlightenment, and have faith that it will get us there. So that all that we do, nothing's wasted, not a single second, not a breath, not a comment, not a laugh. Everything is wrapped in this energetic capsule, and pulls us along, somehow bouncing our particles into enlightenment, like the mind stream. Boom, 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 boom. Here we go. Gewa di nyo du da lama sangye drup gyurne drowa chikyam malupa sala gupashok jangchup semcho rimpoche make panam ge gyorchi kewanam pame paryam gong ne gong du pelwar sho. The wish granting, wish fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world. To the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers, honor the three jewels, savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Venerable one, to you whose kindness exceeds that of all the conquerors of those, for those wanderers in far off places, especially the West, mindful of your loving concern for us in intentionally descending again into a family of a far distant land, we make this request. Lama, oh Lama, please, please live long. So rest well, be well, get well,
Thank you, Rachel.
and be happy. Yeah, rejoice, rejoice in every second that you do good things. Rejoice.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
A special dedication for those people who are ill and are struggling to revive and be well.
And I don't know if you guys know, but Anila's brother died a month or two ago, so I've been dedicated.
Which Anila and which brother?
Ani Nikhil. You know Ani Nikhil who moved to Hawaii. She used to live in Taos. I think you froze again.
I don't remember her.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Good night. We're gonna